Hello, everyone. I am Ambassador Capricia Marshall, Vice Chair of the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center's Advisory Council and Ambassador in Residence at the Atlantic Council. Welcome to another special episode of our Experts of the America series. Today's conversation is part of our International Women's Day campaign, #Mujeres at the Table, which seeks to raise awareness and promote constructive dialogue on leadership and women's rights in the Americas. It is a special honor to introduce our guest today, Ambassador Martha Bárcena. Ambassador Bárcena has had an extensive career in foreign service, having served as ambassador to Mexico, to Turkey and Georgia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and Turkmenistan, Denmark, and most recently, as the first female ambassador of Mexico to the United States, where I was privileged to call her neighbor. Yes, her career is extensive and amazing. Ambassador Bárcena's diplomatic finesse is legendary. She is truly the best of the best, who values the skills of diplomacy used to bridge build in those critical bilateral relationships. One of the greatest of many of her many accomplishments was during her time in Washington, D.C., the final ratification of the USMCA at her hands directly. I am pleased to announce that Ambassador Bárcena is also the newest member of the Center's Advisory Council, joining a distinguished group of leaders from the Americas. It is such an honor to have you here with us today, my friend. Thank you. So let's get started.
Thanks to you, dear Capricia, mi amiga. I am the one who is honored to be now member of the Advisory Council of the Center of Latin America of the Atlantic Council. I'm also very honored to count you as my friend, not only as my neighbor, but as my friend, as mi amiga. And I'm really thrilled of having the opportunity of this conversation about the role of females and women in diplomacy, because I think it's a role that should be expanding, not by years, but by days. And that the more women that we have at the table, seated at the table, the better the global order will be.
Oh, you are absolutely right, Ambassador. And thank you. Thank you for those very kind remarks. All right, let's get to the questions. As women in foreign service, we know that the diplomatic corps in Mexico, the United States, and other countries in the world lack diversity and women at the table. What are key factors impeding more women from entering, staying, and ascending the ranks in diplomacy? What do you foresee as the impact of women such as yourself as the first woman Mexican ambassador, female ambassador of Mexico to the United States, as well as many other firsts like Wendy Sherman, Victoria Nuland, and Linda Thomas Greenfield, just to name a few that were recently appointed to senior roles in the United States?
Well, I followed very closely the appointment of Wendy Sherman, Victoria Nuland, and Linda Thomas Greenfield. I think it's wonderful that the US has so many women now in top posts at the State Department and as ambassadors. For the young women, young female women entering the foreign service, I think the challenge is not entering anymore. If you see the latest generations of career Mexican foreign service, they are more or less half and half. About 50% of the young people joining the foreign service are women. I think the main challenge is remaining in the foreign service. And why I think that is the main challenge, and then advancing in the ranks of the foreign service that are very much linked to the remaining on the foreign service. And I think it's because it's getting more and more difficult to balance the professional life and the family life and personal life, particularly if you are a woman with children. because or if your husband is if your husband or your partner simply has another career which is very difficult to really interact with your own. So starting with very simple cases, for example, the Mexican Foreign Service receives some kind of support for education, but it's only on primary, secondary, and high school. That means that for women with children in nursery, they do not have this economic support to pay for nurseries, not yet, even if the law was changed, but they are not receiving this support. And if you know, the cost of nursery in many countries can be as high as high school. So that means that half of their salaries may have to go just to pay for the nursery, if their partners are not really able to take care of the child. So for them, they can join the foreign service, but then maybe they will get married or have a partner, have children, and it's getting more and more complicated for them to remain. Then the second thing is when you are, it's the lack sometimes of predictability of where are you going to be sent. Although our law says that normally we are posted to a 4-year term post, which does not apply for ambassadors, but even it does not apply for young people because, for austerity measures, for budgetary, prescriptions or constraints, they never know if they are going to have this predictability. So they are not able to plan their career in advance and to say, then after this post, we will be moving to this other post. And this has a lot of implications, for example, in the kind of education that you can choose for your children. Are you going to choose the American education, the US education? Normally, the American schools are very, very expensive. Or are you going to choose the British education, in which schools are less expensive? Or are you going to choose the French education, in which you can move your children almost during any time of the year, and is also less expensive? And then the thing is that there are not many schools, either with the Mexican or the Spanish system around the world, in which children can be educated in Spanish. So this is the kind of challenges, predictability in your postings, the possibility of planning your career, access to support for education, access to support for example, women or families that have children with disabilities, with autism, and this, so that when you move them abroad, you have to take into account where are you going to move them so they can have access to special education. So the big challenge now, I don't think, is joining the foreign service, is remaining in the foreign service with an environment that makes your life easier as a woman to keep a family, to keep a personal life, and then of course reaching the highest levels. Even now that more and more women are reaching the rank of ambassadors and consul generals, we still have very few. We are not 50-50. Joining, we are 50-50, but not in the top ranks. So there is still a lot of room for improvement.
Ah, wow. Your expertise is just so welcomed. What an answer. Has the lack of gender parity been a detriment to diplomacy as a field? In your experience, how have women being at the table made a difference in the outcome of a negotiation or of a decision being made?
I think not having enough women at the table has been detrimental for diplomacy, because I've always thought that in general, not always, but in general, women have more empathy. So, and empathy is so important and so key for negotiations, for understanding the other, for really acknowledging what is the other side, the other part, what are their objectives and the style, and how do you negotiate. We normally, not always, but normally we are softer. That doesn't mean that we yield more. It's just that our style can be less confrontational. And then you, as a former director of protocol, you know that in general, women, we pay a lot of attention to details. It's not only the general view, which we have, but details that are very important, so that you don't make missteps in receiving a delegation, in the kind of flowers that you use for a table, even a negotiating table. The most simple things that we know very well is when you negotiate with the Chinese, or this, you don't use white flowers, no? Or you don't use yellow flowers, because of the message that you are sending with those colors. So I think the ability of empathy, the ability of attention to detail, and the ability of always trying to keep the conversation going and not being confrontational, but always looking for areas in which you can have some more agreements or meeting points, are very important characteristics of female diplomats. And then I think in very specific cases also, and I always use the example of the Mexican Consular Service, which is huge. We have 50 consulates in the US. And a very important task of the Mexican Foreign Service is to protect the Mexican community. And when we say protection activity, consular protection, it means we go to hospitals, to jails, to detention centers. Women that are in detention centers, in hospitals, in jails, will open up always more to female diplomats and consuls than to men, particularly to denounce violence or abuse. They will not say to men that they were abused or that they were mistreated, but they will tell women. So it is very important to have women in the consular service. In general, they will open up more women talking to women than women talking to men.
I never thought of that before. I mean, in the context that you're putting it in diplomacy and in this manner. Wow, really fascinating. You know, I wanted to go back to just a little bit of what you briefly touched upon in your first answer, the work-life balance. When your children were young, you took a leave of absence from the Foreign Service for about 9 years, and not only returned to the Foreign Service, but you ascended to become the first female Mexican ambassador to the United States. What advice do you have for women who temporarily leave the workforce and may have difficulty resuming, as well as for their employers and partners whose support are key to their success? What policies also can be implemented from within the diplomatic and foreign policy institutions or by national governments to ensure that this is no longer a hindrance to women?
It's a very important question, Capricia. I think my most important advice to women that are or have to ask for a leave of absence is never stop studying and preparing yourselves. Even if you cannot go to the office because you are taking care of the children, or you are posted to a hardship post and you cannot be with your husband, never stop studying and never stop preparing yourself for returning, and follow up what is going on, either learning another language, learning more tools to be a better diplomat in the future. Never stop studying. For employers, and I would say in this case, the foreign ministries and the international organizations, always do not think that because a woman took a leave of absence, they went immediately out of the labor market and they are not capable to return. On the contrary, that experience of a leave of absence, of doing other things, will bring another perspective to your organization and will bring new ideas to your organization on how to reach this work-life balance, which I think is key. And particularly if you talk to the young generations, they really want to have this balance, this work-life balance. Maybe in my generation and before my generation, people would say, we live to work. No, we work to live, and to live well. So you have to find this very important work-life balance. So never stop studying, never stop preparing yourselves. See, as the head of an organization, the experience of females as an enrichment to your own organization. They will come with new ideas for this work-life balance. And just now, I think one of the silver linings of COVID is that COVID has taught us that we can work from home, that we can have more flexibility. So be flexible with females and males. So if they ask you, can I work from home 3 days a week? Because then I can manage my time, and maybe in the morning or at lunchtime, I will be with my children or with my family, but I will be working from 10 o'clock to 12. Be flexible, and just do not measure people by the time they are dedicated to the job, but by their results. If they give you results, let them manage their time. Let them manage the way they work. Do not count how many hours they are seated in a chair or checking in the office, but that they give you results. And this is very, very important.
Absolutely brilliant. It's the results. I so appreciate that as someone who is caring for not a child, but my elderly mother.
It's the same. It's the elderly mother, aunts, uncles, people of the family that you have to take care of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have given us so many wonderful pieces of advice and so many just spot on insights. This is great. I'm going to walk away fully filled with all of your wonderful advice and information. But to close, regrettably, we have to close down today's conversation, our discussion. Madam Ambassador, what specific lesson would you like to share with the women and girls who we know are out there watching us about being a woman in foreign service? What's that one lesson that you would like them to walk away with? And also, because we know it is a 50-50 world here, what advice would you give men and boys on being champions of women's rights?
I would say that the sky is the limit. There are no limits for girls. There are not limits for women. In a way, of course, there are, crystal roofs to shatter, but don't think on that. Just think that there are no limits, and that people should be measured by their capabilities, their intelligence, their dedication, never by their gender. Never. And that believe that we will have a better world when we have a world that is more balanced on duties and responsibilities, both at work and at home. And that it's very important that we women cannot do all the change alone. That will be totally crazy. It will be too much confrontational and not having results. But we need the men, the boys, to change also their mentality, to feel comfortable having a powerful and an intelligent woman at their side, and not being afraid of having a woman partner that can outshine them maybe sometimes. That will happen, and sometimes the woman will be outshined by the partner. So don't be afraid. Don't think that there are limits. Don't think that there are certain areas or places that you cannot go. There are no limits. So, but this mentality of no limits have to be a mentality not only of the girls and women, but a mentality of the boys and men, and the mentality of the society as a whole.
The limitless possibilities. I love that. I love that. I wish I had you earlier in my life, in my career.
I hope I can motivate young, girls and young women to act with this spirit of limitless possibilities.
I absolutely know that you have, and you will continue to do so. Madam Ambassador, oh, I am so glad to see you, even virtually. I can't wait to see you in person again. Thank you, thank you, thank you for today's conversation. You've just filled all of our souls with your incredible expertise. So on behalf of the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center, just thank you so much for everything, for your career, your example, and especially for today's insights on gender issues. Thank you so much.
I am the one who is thankful, and Adrienne Arsht, who gives the name to the Adrienne Arsht Latin American Center. It's an example also for all women.
Oh, gracias.
Gracias, Mexico.
Lo mismo.